Baldur's Gate 3 just released on August 3rd and has consumed every free second of my life. I've been this lost and enthralled by a game since Skyrim released when I was in high school, and I pretended to be sick so I could skip school and play it all day, and I still haven't stopped playing it 12 years later. And I feel Baldur's Gate will have this type of staying power. The game may be a serious problem for the gaming industry and myself because it's already sunk its meaty tentacles into my brain, and it's literally all I think about. But a new bar has been set with this game, one that all RPGs, for better or worse, will be likely judged on going forward, and itself will spawn a new subgenre of games, the Larian RPG. But more on that later. I'm mrholotape, and let's talk about Baldur's Gate. In this video, I'm going to talk about encounters in the first few hours of the game, but try my best to avoid spoiling anything too important. But to be honest, I'm not sure I even know what is or isn't important in this game. Before we hop into the meat of the gameplay, let's talk about why some people are saying Baldur's Gate 3 may be a problem for the gaming development community. Only a week or so out from its release, Baldur's Gate 3 is already one of the highest rated games of all time. The depth and quality are truly astounding and has set the bar to new heights. The game supposedly has over 17,000 endings. I can't even wrap my pea-sized brain around that. And some game developers have lobbied complaints that Larian Studios has basically set an unrealistic expectation of what game studios are capable of. Then others have commented saying, "Oh, I hope people don't expect small studios of 40 or so people to be able to make a game like this." Yeah, no duh. I don't think anyone is complaining about the quality of games coming from indie studios. We as gamers, though, are just fed up with AAA studios feeding us crap and then acting shocked when we complain about it. Larian proved that AAA games need to step up. They did everything right by the player. And how easy would it have been for them to slide microtransactions into this game, and they chose not to. If this game was made by a company like Ubisoft or EA, all of the sub-races would most likely be locked behind a paywall. There would be armor bundles be purchased in the Crown store. You could get a pet griffin for $20. Larian Studios over-delivered, and they didn't bend over their customers while doing it. Baldur's Gate 3 is the third installment of the series, but don't worry if you haven't played the previous titles, it doesn't matter and it won't affect your enjoyment. The game is based on the world and mechanics of tabletop Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I'm going to be totally transparent here. I've actually never played D&D, and how I actually even found Baldur's Gate is that a group of friends and I were going to start a D&D campaign, but none of us have ever played, and I was doing extensive research about how to start playing and eventually stumbled on BG3. What has unfolded before me is a gaming experience unlike anything I've seen. This is a game where your actions have actual consequences. It's almost unsettling. I've become so accustomed to the stakes being so immensely low in video games. I can screw around and nothing will go wrong, and that's just not the case. Games like Elden Ring and Kingdom Come Deliverance have attempted to raise the stakes by reworking save systems and integrating brutal combat and gameplay, but this is just totally different. Everything you do has an effect on the world and future outcomes. It makes nearly every decision nerve-wracking and thought-provoking. There's an ultimate premium on choices and the power that's behind them. So let's start at the start. Character creation is unbelievable. There's 11 different races to choose from, and the majority of them have sub-races inside of them. And the sub-races included, there's basically, I think, like 31 or 33 different races to choose from. But 10 of those alone are sub-races of the Dragonborn. For editing the player character, I was a little surprised by the simplicity of the editor. There is no sliders or adjustments, and it's just selecting from templates. It's probably for the best, though, because there is more important information to be concerned with, and the character that can be created can still be super unique and incredible looking, and I think I'd prefer a super clean character editor with extremely high quality appearance than a million options and an okay looking character. And I think the reason behind the simplicity of the editor is that there's so many cutscenes and dialogues in this game that if they had to account for 5 million different looking characters, it would be nearly impossible. Then, classes are next, and this is what makes your character special and unique. It dictates the character's proficiency, skills, spells, and actions. Unlike most RPGs where race and class doesn't have much of an effect outside maybe a small racial bonus between one another, in Baldur's Gate 3, race and class have an enormous impact on the game. From how NPCs interact with the player character, the dialogue options available in skill checks. Then there is the background section, which adds in more detail and history to your player. Before you've even interacted with the in-world game, the choices made in the menu screen matter. And if all that overwhelms you as a first-time player, there are several pre-made characters with built-in stories and all that confusing stuff already fleshed out for you. The game opens with this incredible cutscene of the Mind Flayer ship, the Nautiloid, being assaulted by Githyanki dragon riders. The cutscenes in this game are unbelievable, and the voice acting is the best I've ever seen in a video game.
My, what manner of place is this? A path to redemption? Or a road to damnation?
From the delivery, the cast of voices, the performances, and the writing, legitimately a 10 out of 10 across the board on the voice acting. I feel like I've become so accustomed to voice acting in video games being pretty janky and honestly sometimes cringy.
Yeah, my problem is I'm too tired to punch your face in.
When it's done this well, it's jarring how different of an experience it is. I've just become enraptured in the storylines and the voices that are telling them to me.
Blessed by Tyr. I've wielded it since I swore my oath.
My first playthrough making my way through the Nautiloid felt like walking through a nightmare. Having been thrust into the story aboard an alien ship and being a D&D virgin, I'm playing a new game that mechanically is unlike anything I've ever played. Set in a world I know nothing about and placed into an alien ship that contains no items or familiarity to a typical RPG fantasy starting area. I'm instantly super uncomfortable, and it's literally perfect. The tutorial is great. It introduces the player to a lot of mechanics, from skill checks, dice rolls, dialogue, and combat. The game gives the player a lot without spoon-feeding too much information. There is so much more that is learned in the game with experience, but the tutorial gives a shove to start some momentum and gets the wheels kind of turning. Even now, with 25 plus hours into the game, there's still so much I'm learning from the game mechanics standpoints that it's another layer of added fun. When those moments come up like, oh, wait, holy crap, I didn't know I could do that. It's just so cool that you're still having those moments, 25, 30 hours into the game. And after making my first solo character and getting a couple hours into the game, a few friends wanted to make a group playthrough. And that's so amazing about this game, is that you can play it with a group of friends or solo, and I think the enjoyment is comparable either way. And I was super excited to go play with the homies, but even though the tutorial area was cool, I wasn't really looking forward to having to play through it again. It's kind of become standard for me. Once I see an intro or tutorial, 1 or 2 times, I want to blow through it as fast as freaking possible. But man, was I wrong. With my friends, I created a new class and race, a barbarian. The way my main man Grub interacted with the world was entirely different than my bard I made solo. When I first encountered Shadowheart, my beautiful gamer goth GF, on my bard, I prodded around with the console holding her prisoner, but I couldn't figure it out, so I kind of just left her hanging. When I got to the console with Grub, the barbarian, one of my friends who also played a solo character goes, oh, hey, you know what? The key to open her pod is over in this other room. I'll just go grab it. And while he went looking for a key, Grub talked to Shadowheart and decided to just rip the door right off the freaking hinges because he's a strong, strong boy. This is when my eyes truly opened. like, wow, everything in the game matters and everything is completely different from character to character. Honestly, that was an exciting but scary realization to me. Then the hamster wheel in my brain started spinning. Oh god, what if I make a wrong choice? What if I kill someone important? What if I don't kill someone important? Why is this ox looking at me? Tell me your secrets, beast! So when I first decided that I wanted to play D&D with my friends, I started looking into doing a one-shot. When researching how to write a good campaign, and the best advice I found was along the lines of instantly raise the stakes and start the timer. This game starts with the player's characters being abducted aboard a mind flayer ship with a parasite being inserted into their brain. The stakes have been raised. Then it's quickly revealed that, hey, if we don't find a cure quickly, we too are going to become the sinister mind flayers. Boom, timer started. In video games, time is irrelevant. Most games, quests will be there waiting for you, no matter how long you take. I can accept a bounty to kill some bandits at level 1, completely forget about it for months, come back around 30 levels later and get it done. Yeah, not quite the case in this game. I was deep underground exploring a ruin, and I found a group of dwarves excavating the ruin. They claimed someone important had been trapped behind the doors, and after a trap went off, rubble fell and blocked the doors. This man is someone that I actually need to talk to for my current quest. They currently had a group of gnome slaves working with pickaxes, clearing the debris, and they expressed the concern about getting him out as quickly as possible so he doesn't die in there. So, now I have a few things on my list: clear the rubble, talk to the man, and I can also possibly help free these slaves. So, after following a lead to some explosives to help clear the rubble and rescue the trapped man, I actually stumbled upon a different set of rubble leading deeper into the temple. So, I figured I'd set off and explore this and see what's interesting and if there's any treasure I can find before heading back to go help the gnomes and free the guy. When I'm nearly done exploring this offshoot of the ruin, I get a journal update. The cave-in was cleared. Oh. So I quickly run back to where this was, and everyone's gone, except for one person. The corpse of the man I needed to speak to for this quest. My journal now says, Nier is dead, and the deep gnomes and their captors are gone. We missed our chance to rescue them. Frick. I'm not accustomed at all to games actually having timers and penalties, and it's amazing. The player's actions have consequences, and in this case, the lack of action had consequences. The beautiful aspect of D&D on the tabletop is the player is basically only limited by their creativity and the dungeon master's discretion. When playing video games, I'll often think of a creative and unique solution to obstacles I'm confronted with, but most of the time creativity is pretty limited though due to mechanics and technical restraints. Yeah, that doesn't really exist in Baldur's Gate. Obviously there's some things that just can't be done, but for the most part, it feels like the sky's the limit. And typically being creative adds way more fun, and the game seems to almost be set up for players figuring out and being rewarded by finding creative solutions. While playing with my friends, we had a tank cleric, a pure support bard, a glass cannon sorcerer, and myself, the barbarian. Early on, I hadn't really found all that great of a two-handed weapon, so I felt my damage was a bit lacking and leaving too much work for our sorcerer of the group. At some point, I right-clicked an item and realized I could throw things. Weapons, items, and people were all fair game. Suddenly, I found myself being way more effective in combat by just hucking barrels, pushing people into fires, throwing goblins off any nearby ledge. Suddenly, the game totally changed for me, and it became, okay, how can I most creatively use my environment to fight enemies and solve the problems I'm confronted with? Probably the single biggest component of Dungeons & Dragons is dice rolling, which I assumed would probably be one of the most tedious and uninteresting parts of the gameplay in Baldur's Gate, but man was I mistaken. Dice rolls add this distinct element of chaos and strategy that as a non-D&D player, I wasn't ready for how much I enjoy rolling. It's like watching a slot machine spin and just hoping desperately for the right numbers. My group and I were playing, and we entered a dungeon with this massive ogre guarding it. Although my barbarian grub was the worst at persuasion in the group, we thought, okay, well, this is an ogre, so maybe it'll value strength, and me being the strongest would be most likely to pass the upcoming check. Well, no. All of a sudden, the diplomatic persuasion with an ogre is left up to grub. I needed a 22 to pass the persuasion check. We were basically all ready to fight, and all of a sudden, a natural 20 appears on my die, and my friends and I all freaking lose it. This adds in another element into gameplay that I think is missing from a lot of other games: luck. Sometimes, no matter how much you prepare or hope and wish, sometimes life is cruel and unfair, and that's just bad luck. On the other hand, sometimes life's a peach, and things work out better than could have ever been expected, and that's good luck. It removes the black and white that is present so often in video games. In the Fallout series, there's a level lock on what containers can be lockpicked and what computers can be hacked. Find a juicy chest, but you're mediocre at lockpicking? Well, too bad. You can't even try to open it. In Baldur's Gate, oh, your player sucks at sleight of hand, but you still want to try to pick this lock? Have a crack at it. I think the questions asked in video games are often so finite, and it's typically just yes or no. That decision being up to fate, but under the player's influence to make the best choices to benefit the role, feel amazing. Thankfully, the developers also had the sense to not make the player roll for everything. While playing, a large amount of rolls happen in the back end, and a notification will pop up saying perception passed or perception failed, or whatever is being checked in the moment. It could have been a pretty miserable experience if everything had to be rolled for. The developers at Larian did a great job there, balancing the behind the scenes rolling and the active rolling. I typically hate followers and companions in video games. I find they are almost always more of a burden than beneficial. They get in the way, set off traps, alert enemies, and spout the same freaking voice lines over and over again.
I am sworn to carry your burdens.
Probably one of the only followers I've liked was my other goth gamer GF, Serana, from the Dawnguard expansion in Skyrim, but even she gets annoying because she says a handful of the same dialogue lines on repeat. The companions in this game are incredible. Obviously, the voice acting is just superb, but their stories, the dialogue interactions are all done so well. The player is able to be as invested or disengaged with the party members as you see fit. If I really want to be invested in my relationship with Shadowheart, I can be. But I also don't even have to use her as a member. Or she can be a member, but I don't really even have to hear her stories. The player is also able to romance any of the members, which is really interesting. Your companions have an approval bar basically dictating how they feel about the player, and your actions and decisions influence your companion's opinion on the player character. So it adds an entirely new layer into decision making in the game of, well, this will probably be the easiest thing to do, but I know Asterion would hate it if I help this person. It really adds this different element into making decisions. And typically, I always play games without companions. But in Baldur's Gate, it's a struggle for me to decide which companion I'm actually going to bring along on my adventure to fill out my team. I love random encounters and finding small, impactful moments in video games that aren't necessarily tied to a quest. In fact, the other day I made a video all about what makes a good random encounter, and you should check it out if you haven't seen it already. But this game is full of hidden gems to find and uncover. Early on in my first playthrough, I wandered into a cave, and inside, a giant owlbear wandered through the cave with its young by its side. My party actually managed to creep around them without them becoming aggressive, so I thought, oh, maybe they aren't even aggressive, and I walked over to the chest that was next to the owlbear's nest. And what do you know? We're now in combat. I focused all my intentions on the large owlbear, just trying to kill it as fast as possible. And about 3/4 of the way through the fight, I kind of realized that the juvenile owlbear wasn't even attacking at all. And once we killed its mother, a cutscene occurred where the baby approaches its dead mother looking horrified. Then it begins feeding on the fresh carcass of its deceased mom. Then the dialogue option pops up to just kill the baby, to put it out of its misery. And I know this is dramatic, but I literally turned off the game because what I had just done depressed me so much. I just didn't feel like playing anymore for the night. I am not used to there being consequences and guilt with my actions in a video game. These owlbears didn't even try to fight me at first, and I sparked the fight because I was greedy and I walked too close to their nest. A video game made me feel like a bad person. That's just crazy. Not everything in this game is this unbelievable discovery, though, which is probably a good thing. If every single second of the game is special, is anything that special? Some normalcy or averageness sprinkled in helps highlight the great moments. I followed this enormous trail of blood and corpses of humans and tieflings and gnolls, and it led to a toll house. This place is loaded with different crates and items, and in the basement I found a man deceased on the floor with the nameplate Dead Toll Collector. I dug around through my inventory and found a scroll of Speak to the Dead. I cast it on the man on the edge of my seat to hear what the spirit of the undead was going to reveal to me, and pretty much nothing happened. He told me he was the toll collector, and he was killed by goblins. Well, that was helpful. The truth is, if every moment in the game was set to a 10 out of 10, it would probably actually lose a bit of its excitement. Moments of disappointment help add to the exciting moments. And yeah, to be fair, an old man who's a toll collector probably isn't very interesting, and it's my own fault for expecting more out of that situation. They thought of everything in this game. The inventory systems are so incredibly well designed. From being able to instantly share inventories with party members, transfer unneeded items back to camp at a click, there's sub-inventories for small, tedious supplies like camping gear, alchemy, and keys. So many small quality of life implements that make the game just far more enjoyable. Inventory management in a lot of games is just such a chore, and Larian made it smooth and painless, and it just makes the game more enjoyable. The different ways a player can even interact with the world and with their items is unbelievable. Depending on your player's strength, basically everything is throwable, so it allows so much room for creativity, from yeeting a healing potion at your teammates to destroying a barrel of wine and throwing a candle into it and lighting the entire place aflame. I can't even begin to describe how excited I am for the future of this game. The amount of hours from different characters and classes I'll get to sink into it fill me with joy just thinking about it. And if you're someone who's put off by turn-based combat or complicated game mechanics, don't be. This game feels super accessible and allows each player to take the game at their own pace. And it's very much a learn-on-the-job type of game. I've barely scratched the surface, and this is already one of my favorite games I've ever played. And once I've completed the game, I'm hoping to do a long and detailed review, or whatever you'd call this type of video. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and go watch some of my other videos. And I will catch you on the next one.